Over the centuries, various empires have risen and fallen, but their legacy remains. Among the greatest of these is the Persian Empire, whose influence is still felt in the laws we follow, the roads we travel, and the cultures we celebrate. However, long before Persia became the Pearl of the East, before the Hanging Gardens of Babylon mesmerized the world, there was an ancient civilization called Elam that stood at the crossroads of history. But the thing is, being at a crossroads is a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it means you're at the center of trade and culture, but on the other, it also means you're at the top of any war-hungry empire's list of desirable territories. Located in what is now southwestern Iran, Elam was a land rich in resources, but plagued by bad luck. It had fertile lands thanks to the rivers that flowed through its valleys, but was never strong enough to hold off its powerful neighbors. And when you live next door to giants, you only have two options. Either you grow up fast, or you get trampled. The Sumerians knew this very well. They were the first to deal a crushing blow to Elam in the oldest recorded war in human history. Historians disagree on exactly when it took place, but most believe it was around 2700 BC. But if there's one thing we've learned from history, it's that it's like a merry-go-round, and power never stays in one place for long. After the war, the great Sargon of Akkad conquered Elam while expanding his vast Akkadian empire. The region became another jewel in his crown. But any kingdom built on conquest is like a house built on sand. Sooner or later, the tide turns. By the time we reach the 12th century BC, Elam is no longer a victim. Now, he is the predator. King Shutruk-Nakhunte is leading a series of conquest campaigns at an unprecedented speed, something the world has not seen before in the history of human warfare. He overthrew one city after another, conquering much of what we now call Mesopotamia. The wheel of history had turned. The once conquered had become conquerors. But this would not last long. For a kingdom divided from within cannot stand, and that is what led to the fall of Elam. With power came greed, and with greed came infighting. The heirs of Shutruk-Nakhunte began to quarrel and war among themselves, for each of them desperately coveted the crown. And while they were tearing each other apart in power struggles, Babylon saw her chance. In 1120 BC, the famous king Nebuchadnezzar I struck his blow and captured Elam. The region thus came under the control of the Babylonian Empire for centuries to come. But, as always, change is inevitable. From the steppes of Eurasia, various nomadic tribes begin to flock. The Iranian warriors, the ancestors of the Medes, the Persians and the Parthians, the peoples who will one day build one of the mightiest empires the world has ever seen. At first, the Elamites and these new tribes coexisted peacefully. Over the centuries, they mixed and their cultures merged. Even as the power of the Iranian tribes grew, the Elamite language and traditions persisted. In fact, for a long time, the Iranians who ruled the land used the Elamite language as the official language, until the Medes came along. If the Elamites were the first big players in this region, it was the Medes who turned the game completely around. According to Herodotus, the ancient historian known for his colorful and sometimes exaggerated accounts, a man named Deokes was the first true Iranian ruler who unified the region. Of course, we should take Herodotus's words with a grain of skepticism. He is, after all, the man who told us the legend of the 300 Spartans. But whether Deokes was the true founder or not, one thing was certain: the Medes already ruled. When his grandson Sayuzaris ascended the throne, the Medes were thoroughly tired of the continuous oppression of the powerful Assyrian Empire. However, they were not the only ones. The Babylonians were also fed up with Assyrian domination and decided to join forces. In 612 BC, these two unlikely allies stormed the great city of Nineveh, the heart of the Assyrian Empire, and burned it to the ground. The once invincible Assyrians no longer existed. Yet, as we have already learned from history, no victory lasts forever. In little more than half a century, the Persians would rise and create one of the greatest and most advanced empires in human history under the leadership of one man, Cyrus the Great. Before he became a great conqueror, Cyrus was just a vassal, a mere subject of the mighty Median Empire. No one suspected that the quiet and calculating young ruler of a small Persian kingdom would rise up against his masters. But Cyrus had a secret. He had allies in unexpected places, and he possessed something far more powerful than an army: the gift of persuasion. When the Medes sent one of their best generals, Harpagus, to crush Cyrus's rebellion, something unexpected happened. Instead of fighting against him, Harpagus went over to the side of the Persians. Why? What did Cyrus promise him? Gold, power, revenge? No one knows for sure. But one thing is clear: the Medes didn't expect it. With one swift and ruthless military campaign, their empire crumbled. By 550 BC, Cyrus was already king, and he was far from planning to stop there. With the Medes already removed, Cyrus set his sights on even greater conquests. In the 6th century BC, the world was a motley mosaic of powerful empires, each believed to be invincible. But Cyrus was ready to prove them wrong. His first target was Lydia, a wealthy kingdom located in present-day Turkey. Its ruler, Croesus, was known for his untold wealth. He was so wealthy that people at the time even coined the expression, "rich as Croesus." But not even all the gold in the world could save him from what was about to happen. Confident in the greatness of his army, Croesus went to war against Cyrus. But he made a fatal mistake. He underestimated him. On the battlefield, Cyrus was simply invincible. In fact, history tells us that with the exception of Alexander the Great, Cyrus was the most intelligent military commander of antiquity. His strategy was flawless, and his soldiers disciplined. When winter came, Croesus thought the fighting season was over and sent his soldiers home. But Cyrus did not comply with these expectations. He attacked in the dead of winter, and Lydia fell. Then it was Babylon's turn, the city of the legendary Hanging Gardens. The Babylonians believed their city was impregnable, but they were wrong. In 539 BC, Cyrus and his army stood at the city's majestic gates. The Babylonians locked themselves inside, convinced that no army could breach their mighty walls. But Cyrus didn't plan to breach them at all. Instead, he had another ingenious plan. Babylon was built along the Euphrates River. Under cover of night, the Persian soldiers did the unthinkable. They diverted the river's flow. The water level began to drop, and before the Babylonians knew what was happening, the Persian soldiers slipped through the riverbed and entered the city. At dawn, Babylon already belonged to Cyrus. It was one of the most ingenious military conquests even by Napoleonic standards. But there was one thing that distinguished Cyrus from all other conquerors before him: mercy. Instead of slaughtering the peoples he conquered, he liberated them. Among them were the Israelites, who had been Babylonian captives for generations. To them, Cyrus was a savior. Later, in the Hebrew Bible, he was called the Messiah, the only non-Jew ever to receive that title. Once Babylon was under his control, Cyrus's empire stretched from India to the Mediterranean, the largest the world had seen up to that time. But an empire of such size could not rest on its army alone. It needed order. The great king had a solution for that too. He created history's first well-organized state system. First, he divided the empire into provinces, each ruled by a satrap governor. These satraps had power, but they were also closely supervised. Cyrus created a network of spies called the eyes and ears of the king. No rebellion could rise without him finding out. He then introduced the first ever postal system. Along the vast roads of the empire, couriers found fresh horses, food and shelter every 2 days, ensuring the lightning-fast transmission of messages. Finally, it allowed conquered peoples to retain their gods, laws, and way of life. In return, all that was required of them was to pay taxes and serve in his army, a deal that many accepted willingly. This system was so well developed that it lasted for centuries. Even after the fall of the Persian Empire, later rulers, including Alexander the Great, retained many of Cyrus's policies. The Romans, Ottomans, and even medieval European kingdoms borrowed from his model. But we can't talk about Cyrus the Great without mentioning his elite soldiers, the Immortals. These 10,000 tireless men never seemed to die. The moment one of them fell in battle, another immediately took his place. Their ranks never thinned. Their discipline never wavered. Clad in armor, armed with spears, and moving as one, they were the very embodiment of fear. This mighty force remained the backbone of Persian power for generations to come. But of course, King Cyrus's good fortune would not last forever. In 530 BC, he would embark on a fateful campaign to come face to face with the Massagetæ and their ruthless queen Tomyris. An encounter that would turn the history of the Persians 180 degrees and have irreparable consequences. However, we will continue with this story in the second part of our journey to reach the very end of a great empire. You will find the video on the left side of your screen when it is posted.